Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming today. This presentation is called Beyond the Scanner, Advanced Return to Home in the Field, or as I like to call, Getting Dogs Back Home. Okay, my name is Nick Walton. Let's go ahead and jump into it. A little bit about myself. I am from Atlanta, Georgia, born and raised, and I've been working with dogs since I was like 8 years old. I started training dogs when I was around eight. And as soon as I was legally able to work, I got a job training dogs. And that kind of spiraled into becoming a behaviorist in Metro Atlanta. And through my work as a behaviorist, that's what led me to Fulton County Animal Services. Fulton County Animal Services, or Fulton County is the county in which Atlanta is held, but Fulton County is huge. And I fell in love with animal control. I fell in love with working in the field, the 0 to 100, the 100 back to zero. I fell in love with helping people, helping the animals. I fell in love with the entire process. And I ended up studying it almost like a college course. Shortly after that, I became a field training officer. In the years passed by, become one of the cruelty investigators on the team. And my current role with Best Friends Animal Society is I am the senior manager of national shelter support. And what my team does specifically is we just provide support to municipal agencies across the country, as well as our regional teams and other departments across Best Friends. We conduct operational assessments on the shelter and the field. We provide training and mentorship. So I do a lot of conferences. And I have the opportunity to do a lot of travel and get to see kind of how different agencies across the country work. And one thing that I've noticed, which plays into this presentation a bit, is how different and unique each agency is depending on a number of factors. But we'll get into that. And like I said, I appreciate y'all being here. Let's jump into this. It's one of the most important aspects, I believe, in 2024 for animal services to really understand intimately. It is going to be not only a pivotal shift for the reduction in shelter euthanasia, but it's also going to be a pivotal shift towards a change in narrative around what animal control is and does. Anybody that's done this job knows that it is a tough job, right? For many reasons. But one of the big ones for me was constantly being called dog catcher or constantly being looked at like I'm like the bad one, just constantly being the villain. And this is portrayed in media. And so I believe in action. I believe in doing something to change the narrative. And return to home is one of those things that can really help change this narrative. So throughout this presentation, we're going to have some key takeaways. You can read them here. I do want to touch on a couple of them really quickly, like the dog lives somewhere. 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, the dog running down the street that you got the call on has an owner, right? Or their house, this dog lives somewhere. And somebody in this area knows something about this dog. And it is our job as investigators to figure that out. You're going to hear me say that quite a bit through this presentation as investigator, right? We need to take the concepts and principles of investigation and apply it to return to home. One thing that I've noticed riding in trucks across the country is officers are really quick to end this investigation, right? Whenever you get a dog that you're looking for its owner and it doesn't have tags and it doesn't have a microchip, it's like, okay, that's as far as we can investigate this further. Time to get our next call. And I couldn't disagree with that anymore. I think that there's so much that we can do. Be part of the solution, right? We talked about the narrative and the change in narrative. That's one of the big problems that I see a solution for with this, but also to prevent the unnecessary intake, which therefore reduces unnecessary euthanasia. Okay, it's one of those situations from an animal control's perspective where you are the front line, you are the tip of the spear, you have so much control over the shelter operations. And we need to stop thinking about the shelter as like this safe haven where we can save dogs and bring them to. It's not that. The shelter is not a great place for a dog to be, not only for the risk of euthanasia, but also just for sickness and stress, overcrowding, taking spots from dogs that might actually need to be there, resulting in euthanasia. And so being part of the solution is a valuable piece of this puzzle. And I truly have like almost a military mindset when it comes to unity and unity of command. And I believe that we need to start working closer with our shelter. So you've caught the dog. Now what do you do? You can call this stray. A lot of agencies define stray as like a dog without a known owner, but I just say stray is just a dog running loose. So you scan it. Pretty simple and easy. Uh, I do want to touch on this really quickly, though, just because a lot of agencies don't know that not all scanners are universal. So make sure when I say that there are different kinds of microchips available. Make sure that your scanner that you're using can pick up on every kind of microchip that's on the market. If you don't know, they sell little test kits, right, with all the different scanners and little stuffed animals. And I recommend every 6 months going and testing your microchip scanner to make sure it's functioning. It does happen quite a bit where scanners will break or malfunction. And so making sure that your scanner is functioning is obviously a big piece of this. Once again, sorry to be a bit elementary here, but how to scan a dog. A lot of agencies or officers will just scan the back. Now, that usually will work. To be frank with you, that's where the microchips are supposed to be. But that's not always where microchips end up. I've seen microchips on feet, on the leg, midway on the legs. Seen microchips on tails and kind of like the base of the tail. And I'm not quite sure why this happens. And my theory is that the microchip was planted whenever the dog was a puppy. And as the dog grew up, the chip naturally migrates. I'm not quite sure how it happens, but I know it does. So make sure whenever we're scanning the dog that we cover the entirety of that dog, all the way down to the feet. So let's say you have no tags. You've got a dog running at large. You have no tags. You have no microchips. Okay, what is the option? Is the option to put the dog in the truck, find our next call, figure out how to get there, write up a report, and go? I cannot tell y'all how non-exhaustive this list is, right? This is just scratching the surface. What's taking place in the country right now is officially a movement towards return to home. This is not something that a couple agencies do. This is just like quite literally scratching the surface of agencies in the country that are saying no to that are saying that we can do more. We're going to apply investigative techniques. We're going to deploy technology. We're going to deploy, very detective-esque strategies in order to help build relationships in communities and have access to information. And that's really all this comes down to is access to information. And we'll get there, but you're going to hear me say that a lot. I always say, put yourself in front of the information train. Okay, so that's what a good investigator would do. Let's say you're working a cruelty case. Well, the more information that you have, the better your case will be. And the same thing applies here. And that's one reason why I love this quote here on the screen by Dr. Josh Fisher. And he talks about businesses. I don't hear that a lot. We don't talk about businesses a lot. But where I was working, and I know across the country this is true, some of the businesses are integral as a part of the community, right? And this business owner at this corner store on Detroit Avenue in Atlanta at the time knew almost everybody, right? Knew everybody on the street, knew everybody on the block, and knew everybody's dogs, and like they would walk their dogs to the store. And so we oftentimes dismiss businesses and how businesses can help us have access to information. So, that applies to churches. That applies to anything that is truly integral to the community. I recommend going and building relationships and trying to, mend the past. Oftentimes, animal control doesn't have a great reputation in our community, but it's never too late to start changing that. So this one here is from my former boss, Tim Foreman. Rest in peace. Tim was a great man and a great leader. For instance, these boots here, by the way, Under Armour boots are completely underrated. And I get challenged on this all the time when I talk about this presentation. I talk about Under Armour boots. People do not like Under Armour boots for some reason. And I cannot tell you how good they are. They're the best boots on the market. Y'all should try them out. Anyways, Tim gave me these boots off of his feet one day because my boots were flopping. I didn't have money to get new boots. He just quite literally he worked the rest of the day without socks on. Just the type of dude he was. But he didn't believe he did believe in technology. I shouldn't say that. But he really put most of his emphasis on old school relationship building, detective investigations, quality over quantity. He did not want us or judge us by the amount of calls that we ran or the amount of dogs that we picked up or the amount of citations that we issued. Okay, those three metrics right there, he believed were outdated and were not a proactive model of law enforcement. And that's my philosophy as well. I can take it, a step further, but I will say that quality over quantity, right? Building relationships, being integral in your community is such a valuable asset to what we do. It cannot be understated. He says you can run 100 calls and fill up your shelter. How's that doing anything? And this all started whenever he came in and he realized how our sweeps were conducted. So I'm not ashamed to say it, but I'm open about it. We used to conduct sweeps, and agencies across the country do this. This is not an uncommon thing. But we locate where's the most amount of animals running at large, and then we'll do a sweep. That means every single truck on the fleet is driving out to this community, and we are actively catching as many animals as possible, impounding them and holding them almost like for ransom with citations at the front desk. Now, when he came in and saw that, he asked me a pivotal question. He's like, have we done this here before in this community? I was like, yeah, absolutely. We go almost every month. It's like, so it's not working. Well, technically, no, it's not. Maybe there's a different strategy that we could try, right? And so we started slowly shifting away from this model of over enforcement, over impoundment, right? Writing tickets for some of the pettiest things that you can imagine, which fills up the court docket. And now the court and the judge looks at our cases, they don't take it seriously because that we're just filling it up with like fluffy dog pooped on some flowers, right? So this is a cyclical issue, and Tim believed in being proactive instead of reactive, and I believe in that philosophy here as well as it pertains to return to home. So all this is here is investigation, right? You actually have to try. Now, this is another thing that I noticed across the country when officers are in the field is we may have access to all the tools. We have the brand new trucks, we have the vest, we have the tool belt, we have toolboxes in our trucks, we have technology, we have access to Facebook, lost and found pages, we have everything, but we don't actually try. There was a story. So not long ago, I was riding around. This was in Texas, and I was with an officer, and we found two dogs at a school, right? And the school security officer comes up to us and says, "Hey, yeah, I think the dog's owners live over there in that direction." Didn't know what house it was, but knew it was that direction. The officer said, "Thank you so much. I appreciate that information." Starts writing up the call and starts headed to the next call. This is so common that it's almost like we don't even attempt to try to get the dog back home. And I'm not quite sure why. But I can testify to a certain extent. In the first year of my career, my philosophy was not try as hard as you can to find the pet owner. And I'll tell a story about how my philosophy changed in a minute. But before I do, I want to talk about door hangers. And if I can guess for a second that your door hangers are bright yellow, bright red, or bright orange, with a big badge right on the top of it. Now, I do believe in door hangers, and I believe in the concept of toolboxes, metaphorical toolboxes, right? What tools do we have at our disposal, and what tool will be the best tool for this particular situation? Now, put yourself in the shoes of somebody that might not have a lot, works multiple jobs, right? Single parent, gets home from work, and you see this door hanger on your door. I guess your son had let the dog out or forgot to shut the door earlier in the day. Animal control comes, picks up the dog, locates the owner or locates the home in which the animal lives and puts a door hanger there. And you get off work and you come home and you see that. Well, what does that mean? What that means is I'm going to now have to pay money that I don't have in the first place to get the dog out of the local animal control facility. I'm also going to have to more than likely get a citation. And that citation will require time that I don't have. I can't take off work to go to court, even if I had the money to pay for it. And then I'll have to pay court fees and the citation fees on the back end. And I don't have any of that money. So what this screams at you is line up for a citation. Now, how many people are going to do that don't have, right? It's not a measure of character. It's a measure of ability. So what is going to happen next? They're not going to come get the dog. And the individual is going to go get another dog. We think that because we remove dogs, this prevents dog ownership or pet ownership or cat ownership. It's not the case. People will go get another dog. The problem is that they're just not going to get it from you. They're not going to get it sterilized and vaccinated because there's a break of trust in the community, causing a cyclical, reactive model of law enforcement. So we need to be proactive, build relationships, right? And so what I used to do in this particular case when I was trying to locate the pet's home is I would write handwritten letters, right? Nothing crazy, just like, get a little notebook and you write it out. And instead of saying, this is Officer Walton, Fulton County Animal Services, please contact us at your, immediately. I would be more diplomatic in my approach because it sets everybody up for success. And so I would say something like, hey, this is Nick Walton with Fulton County Animal Services, right? I didn't say Officer Walton. This is Nick Walton with Fulton County Animal Services. I believe we picked up your dog. If your dog is brown, happy, fluffy, and a great dog. I would just kind of like briefly describe the dog in a happy manner. And then I would say, my goal is to get you your dog back or return you your dog back with as little paperwork as possible. Please contact me at this number. And the amount of people that would call me from that technique versus this governmental door hanger, municipal-esque door hanger on the door was astronomical. Because we have to understand the impact that our reputation and our actions have. Putting ourselves in the shoes of somebody else and having some empathy and understanding where somebody's coming from can help us dictate what tools in our toolbox to use. You just follow them home, right? This is not a new concept to many animal control officers out there. We've all been on low-speed pursuits, right? Where you're just like riding down the street slowly. The dog's like trotting, looking back at you every 10 steps just to make sure you're still trailing it. You're just like yelling out the window, like, go home, go home. And then you just follow it right to its front door. But there is some psychology involved here, which is pretty interesting, and some behavior as well. So dogs will not bolt most of the time anywhere unfamiliar. Okay. They're not going to bolt somewhere where they don't feel safe or have comfort. Dogs know all the holes under the fences. They know all the houses that they can get up under to evade escape or to evade capture, if you will. And it's pretty funny sometimes. I remember just countless times riding down the street, just like looking at this dog just slowly running down the street, walking me straight home. But they're not going to bolt somewhere unfamiliar. And you can actually use this to your advantage also. So if you know that this dog is always going 3 streets down, right? Always going 3 streets down. And you're trying to investigate it. You're trying to figure out who has information about this dog. I'm trying to figure out which home this dog lives in. Well, now you know where to look. Because if the dog's going that way every time that it's trying to get away, that tells me that that's where its comfort, safe, and safety is. So that is where I need to start my investigation now, because that is more than likely where the information lives. That is the end goal, is to set ourselves up for access to information so that we can reunite pets with families. All right, so we all have this superpower. Animal control officers have this unbelievable superpower where we can be looking down, writing up our report, and we just start rolling the window down, right? We don't even look up. We just start rolling the window down and we're like, hey, how can I help you? Like we have the sixth sense of, we can feel when people approach our truck or van. And it's amazing because everywhere I go, officers that have been doing this for a while can literally do this. I'm not even kidding. I'm serious. Like we feel people approaching the truck and we just start rolling the window down. And oftentimes we look at this in a negative light, right? Like, oh Lord, I'm on an investigation. I'm trying to write this report. I'm trying to gather all the pieces of this puzzle. I'm trying to compose this whole situation. And you're asking about, is there a coyote in our community, right? right? Was there a dog bite? Was there a dog attack, right? Everybody always looks at animal control in our neighborhoods. But we can use that in this particular case. That is one of our tools that we can deploy. One of the tools that we can deploy is access to information here, right? And the fact is that people want to engage in conversation with us whenever they see us in their neighborhood. And so what I used to do is I used to put dogs on the truck after I've already knocked on doors and tried to investigate this further. And it's time to write up my call. Instead of rolling up my windows and driving to a local grocery store, parking around the back so nobody can bother me while I write up my call, I'm parking at the closest stop sign or interchange. And I'm opening the outside gate, but the inside gate is still locked. You know, it's one of those where the outside door and then there's still an internal locking mechanism, but you can see the dog. So I'd open the outside door and I would begin writing up my call with the door open and my door open as well. And so anytime anybody rode by, I'd be like, hey, you know, do you know who owns this dog? And the more people you can engage in conversation with, just simple, hey, do you know who owns this dog? The more information you can get. And it really proved itself valuable because oftentimes what we're going to do is we're going to remove ourselves from the information train, right? We're purposefully driving away to remove ourselves from the information. And we need to flip that upside down in this particular case, right? If I lost my dog, what's the first thing I'm going to do? I'm going to run outside. I'm going to start yelling my dog's name. Make sure that you're able to be present in those moments, right? So that you're actually in the community. Another thing is kids. Kids and secrets do not live in the same world. Okay, kids will tell on their mamas. So it's important, like if you see kids, hey, do y'all know who owns this dog? Kids know these animals. Postal carriers, the same thing. Postal carriers are some of the most, and no, quite literally the most well-trained in bite prevention because they get bit so much. But part of their training is identifying faulty gates, right? Like in faulty doors and potential threats. This dog is a potential threat. This dog can get out of a hole in the fence, right? And they have this note system. So other route carriers might be able to have that access to information. Well, we need that access to information too. So I recommend building relationships with your local postal carriers. And I used to have one that worked in my beat, section 13, and we would text regularly. You know, he would text pictures of dogs. I would text him pictures of dogs. Do you know who lives? Do you know who owns this dog? Have you ever seen this dog before? Do you know what direction it goes? The concept is simple. If people are ingrained in our community that have information, we should build relationships with them. Utility workers, sanitation, right? Code enforcement, police officers, postal carriers, kids. And obviously, this is another thing that I used to love to do is, you know, we all had those people in the neighborhood that were just always looking out the window, right? They were up to date on all the drama in the neighborhood. Identify them. Go learn who they are. Go introduce yourself and just simply put a plea out there like, hey, if I ever need help, do you mind if I stop by to see if you have any information about where this dog might live? And go door to door. When you go door to door, obviously, if you see a dog or a house with muddy paw prints on the front door, a tether in the yard, and a dog bowl without a dog on the property, that's a good place to start. Even if it's not their dog, the fact is that they have a dog, and that dog goes outside sometimes, and that would yield itself to an increase in likelihood that they have information. Door to door, just talk to folks. You have to actually try, right? You cannot just sail it in and then magically reunite a pet with its owner or home. And you can call it in. Okay, this was really helpful whenever you have in-house dispatch. In-house dispatch, and also dispatchers have like the memory of an elephant. They can like recall calls from 6 weeks ago without even checking notes. It's amazing. But when you have in-house dispatch in particular, you can really get specific with, hey, has anybody called in on Detroit Avenue or any surrounding areas about a golden retriever mix, right? Or a little brown dog, right? Not on 14th Street, but there was a call over here on 16th Street yesterday that could have been it, and that property was this address, right? You can check loss reports yourself. A lot of times they're digital nowadays, so you can just have them on your phone. You can have it pulled up on your phone, and anytime you find a dog, scan it. Doesn't take much time. You can file a report yourself. You can, and look, I always talk about in-house because if you have 911 or 311 dispatch or any other call taking service, a lot of times they aren't specifically trained in animal related issues. And so you're not going to really unless you have that kind of relationship where you can go in and actually help train your dispatchers, the problem then becomes a revolving door of sorts. And then, you have the next shift that came on and you're trying to access notes from the first one. It usually works best whenever it's in-house. But there's information that lives there, and it's an untapped resource that I've noticed that we don't usually communicate with our in-house dispatch about dogs that we're trying to find the owner for or house. So Ed says, Ed Jameson, formerly out of Dallas, used to have a floating officer. And I really liked this concept because one of the biggest issues that officers are faced with is bandwidth and time. We don't necessarily have all the time in the world all the time to spend, 30 minutes, 45 minutes trying to locate pet's home. And so when staffing allows, they had a float. There would actually be an officer that would go pick up the dog to continue the return to home effort while that responding officer can go respond to priority calls, which I find is pretty fascinating. And agencies are starting to take that concept and apply it in broad ways, right? And earlier on in this presentation, we talked about thinking outside of the box, right? Agencies in Florida, Pasco County, Florida, they have something called ACAs, Animal Control Assistants. Now, what this is it's somebody that has gone through the ranks of their volunteer program, and their volunteer program is structured out in tiers. And if they make it to that final tier, then they can apply to be an ACA, where you can ride with an officer, help write reports, drive county vehicles. You can even go and respond to be that float to help return that animal back to its home. And I know that sounds scary sometimes, but I love pushing the envelope and utilizing resources to increase our officer bandwidth. Now, I want to talk about bandwidth for a second, because I believe there's multiple things that we can do to increase our bandwidth without even doing anything extra. One of those things is called screening calls. And so whenever I would screen calls, what the concept is before I even start my shift, I'm going to go through all of my my dog at large calls in my box, every single one of them. And as we know, some of them might have been placed 3 days ago. Some of them might have been placed 2 days ago, yesterday, right? 12 hours ago. Now, what is the likelihood that that dog is still there, first off? And then, so now we know, where I'm responding to a call from 3 days ago. And I got to drive 20 minutes there, ride around for 20 minutes, and drive 20 minutes to the next call after there's no dog seen. Complete. What a waste of time and effort, energy, money, everything. It's just a total waste. And so what I used to do with screen calls, you just simply call the complainant ahead of time. And you say, hey, I was just calling in, checking in to see the status if you've seen that dog again since you placed the call. And if they have not, then I see that as a no dog seen, complete, right? Spoke to complainant. And that would chop off at least half of my dog at large calls before I even start my shift. And that is a great increase in bandwidth. The next thing that can increase your bandwidth is not being judged by how many calls you run. You're judged over quality over quantity. And what this does is it helps free up that emotional bandwidth to really take those extra steps to return these animals back home. And I always used to say to the officers in my truck that I was training, if you don't have a priority call, the priority is the call that you're on. Does that make sense? So if you don't have an assist police, if you don't have an assist fire, if you don't have an emergency situation, well, then the call that you're working right now is the emergency situation, and you should treat it as such and provide the same amount of effort and energy that you would apply to an animal cruelty case just for a regular old dog running at large, because this is how we're going to be proactive. Also, this is very common. This is something that I've seen quite a bit for agencies that really prioritize returning dogs back home, is they have printers on their trucks, and they just straight up print a found dog flyer right there in the truck. Now they have the opportunity to take pictures and just put a picture of the dog right there. It doesn't take long. It takes a minute. Take a picture of the dog, put it in the little computer, boop, bada beep. Now you have a found dog flyer. And they would just post it, post it around. Similar concept here. This is Maricopa County, and they have found dog signs. And what I really like about these signs isn't just the fact that they're putting notice out there that, like, hey, animal control got a dog. Please help us return it back home. But they do so with action. And so they've built this, they've established this form of trust within the community, that they aren't known for just, making it rain citations, right? They're not known for going above and beyond just to ruin somebody's day, like the classic model of animal control. And so this through action adds trust. And with trust comes information. People are not going to tell on their neighbor if they think that you're going to go there and write them a citation for every single potential issue that could be. Okay, they're not going to, but it takes time and it takes relationship building. And so now in Maricopa County, if I'm living there, I'm going to see that sign. I'm going to pull over and I'm going to read it. And I'm going to say, oh, that sounds like Miss Nancy's dog. I'm going to call them and let them know. It's pretty cool. And it's a way to tap into the hive mind of our community. All right, so we talked about real investigations. We talked about implementing investigations into return to home efforts. We talked about detective type work. We talked about actually trying. Now, I didn't have a lot of online opportunities when I was in the field. Okay, so I had to rely upon this old model of relationship building. But really quick, before we jump into online opportunities, I want to share a quick story which changed my philosophy and flipped it upside down. So the first year of my career, I was very justice oriented, right? Well, if the dog's running loose, person doesn't deserve the dog. It's a bad owner, right? Which is obviously so flawed. But I was, doing what I thought was right at the time, because this is what I was taught by my superiors at the time. And so doing what I thought was right, writing citations for every single thing, not cutting breaks for anything. But there was this one call in particular that changed everything. So I was on Detroit Avenue, and there was this little black lab mix looking dog. And there was a call placed on the dog, little black dog running at large. And so I go to pick it up, and I get the dog. The dog is so sweet. The dog's like the sweetest dog in the world. Just runs up to you, so happy. Put the leash on it, no tag, scan it, no microchip, put it up in the truck, drive away, write my call, and put in my GPS my next call. Didn't think much of it. Now I worked the rest of my shift with this dog on the truck, right? And I don't know if you've ever been to Atlanta, Georgia, but potholes are more common than not, right? Like it's literally more common to have a road with potholes on it than it is to have a road without potholes. And so it's really tough to not hit potholes with animals on your truck. And that's the first thing, and this all plays into it. So give me a second. Let me rip through this. So I continue my shift without thinking anything of it, finish my shift, get the dogs off my truck, sanitize, and continue to work the next day and the next day and the next day. Well, about a week later, this family comes in, a husband, a wife, and 2 daughters. And they're in the office. I happen to be in the office at the time, and they're looking for their dog, a little black lab mix. And they show me a picture of it. I'm like, I've seen that dog. I picked up that dog. Yeah, hold on one second. Let me look it up. So look it up. The dog was euthanized. And I researched that a little bit, and I found out why. And so the dog, whenever I got it off the truck, first off, in the field, it was scary. It was a scary experience. It just like saw some stranger, and some stranger picked it up from its area, right? The area that it knows, put it in this random white box. And then for like 4 hours was just bumped around in the back of this strange truck. Then all of a sudden this door opens up, And there's all these sights and smells and sounds that are so stressful. Dogs barking, right? The smell of dog urine everywhere. It's just like a scary experience for this dog. And so it's fearful. It goes into our intake area to get some, intake vaccinations and shots and medication. And it was cowering in the corner, whale eyes and all, just scared out of its mind, and it nipped at a vet tech. Now, it didn't bite, it didn't make contact, but it nipped. And so that put the dog at the bottom of the list. Whenever you're dealing with a shelter that's well over capacity, it's almost like you have to do that, right? Well, that dog was put at the bottom of the list, and that dog was euthanized. And I had to tell this family of 4, right? Husband, wife, 2 daughters, that their dog had been euthanized. And this family broke down crying. This family like literally fell on the ground, husband and wife too, right? They were just absolutely, utterly devastated by the news that their dog had been euthanized. Just devastated. And that resonated with me to the extreme. And it got worse once I found out where they lived. Where I picked that dog up was directly in front of their house. I didn't even try. I didn't even try to get the dog back home. Now, what this shows is that out of sight, out of mind is a situation that animal control officers oftentimes deal with, because we pick up these animals from the field when we put them in the shelter environment and then don't think about them again. We don't need to think about them again. We just got to go continue to work in the field. And this was one of the first times that out of sight, out of mind concept was not applicable. This was directly in sight and in mind. And then I thought, like, how many families have I devastated just by simply not trying, right? And it completely changed the way that I looked at my role and my job and my philosophy. And it helped whenever Tim came in around the same time frame. All right. I wanted to share that story because I think that it expresses the importance of really actually knocking on a door and just truly just trying something to locate this animal's home, right? This is something that I talk about regularly. It's not talked about enough, but I see it all the time in every agency that I work with. Is you might have 1 or 2 officers that really try, but you might have 6 to 8 that don't give a damn. So in that case, I really recommend, unifying our mission and vision so that everybody on the staff is trying the same things. And I call that a force multiplier. Okay. Now let's get into online opportunities. Okay. This is the area where we can cast the widest net. It is the area where we can get the most amount of information. It is the area where people use the most in 2024. I always say, like, you cannot reach your full potential with return to home if you only do one of them, right? If you only do social media or if you only work in the field. You have to do both. You have to have that trust. You have to actually try. You have to work that as an investigation on the front end. And you have to have social media. So Facebook is going to be at the top of the list. And a good starting point with Facebook is to reach out to admins of your local lost and found pages. So usually every community has one. If you don't, I'd be surprised by that. But most communities on Facebook have like lost pets of name your community. And usually there's like 3, 4, 5, maybe 10 of them. Well, reach out to the admins of these Facebook groups and ask them if they would be willing to cross post, right? So if you have a social media channel and you can post those dogs that you find running at large in the field while you are in the field, they can cross post that onto their channels. If you have a PIO and are unable to have your own social media channel, well, what you can do is you can reach out to those admin groups and you can just send them pictures, right, with a brief description of where you found that pet. And they can post it, right? And so building relationships is the same concept here, but we're building relationships with the Facebook admin for these lost and found pages. It's a great way to take your picture and expose it to hundreds and thousands of people. Nextdoor.com. Nextdoor is for like a neighbor, like for my personal use, a very toxic app, right? There's a lot of drama going on. But For municipal use, it's one of the coolest and the best tools to use. So if you're a municipal agency, you can have access to all of the neighborhoods. Like if I'm a resident and I have access to my neighborhood, that's it. But if you're a municipal agency, you can have access to all of them. So if I respond to a call and say the Royal Oaks neighborhood, well, I can then go to the Royal Oaks next door page and post a picture directly on that page. So everybody in that community that has next door can see it. It is a great way to get access to information. Petco Love Lost. Now, this is a good one. This is one that is transformative. This is one that we're already talking about it as transformative, but as their database grows, it will become even more powerful. What they use is facial recognition software to identify dogs. It's basically that in a nutshell, and it's working tremendously. And so do some research. I could probably do a whole hour on just the technology side of things, but look up Petco Love Lost if you haven't already. Get involved with Petco Love Lost because it is having a huge impact. And I do see this as a mainstay moving forward through through like modern animal services. It is going to be pivotal. So check it out. Ring has a app called Neighbors. Now this is cool because you have camera footage and it is strictly for public safety. So there's no like neighborly drama. There's no like Miss Karen came up, I don't know. But it's really truly just public safety. And so I believe they're building out foundations to be able to put in animal related issues, right? Loose dogs, found dogs, dog bites, whatever it might be. Pretty cool. And I do see that being something as well. Well, what if you don't want to download an app? Right? What if you just want to use what you already have? GIS. Okay, GIS exists for fire department, emergency services, police department, code enforcement, right? Like all these different branches of our government have access to GIS. But for some reason, animal services doesn't. Like we never tap into this resource. Agencies are starting to do so. Okay, this is Maricopa counties. There are plenty more. I know El Paso has this as well, but basically they have a lost and found GIS tool that allows the public to go in and say, I found a dog. I'm going to put a blue dot right here. Oh, look, there's a purple dot. Maybe that purple dot is somebody that lost this dog in my area. And so it's a great way for the community to be able to essentially solve problems on their own, right? We talk about animal control being overburdened. I can't tell you, we are some of the most understaffed departments that I've ever heard of, right? We have, usually it's like, oh yeah, we got 3 officers. And how many people do you service? Oh, 50,000. Just something wild. And this is common across the country. We are known for not having the bandwidth. So I believe that us highly skilled and highly trained individuals that work animal control should focus our attention towards the things that require highly skilled and highly trained individuals. And little Fluffy taking a joyride down the street that is just going to come right back home is not a good use of our time. And so this is a really cool tool to be able to allow the public to kind of resolve their own minor issues. Obviously, if this is like the 5th time the dog got loose, or if this dog has a broken leg, or if this dog, everything I say throughout this presentation, please add balance and logic, right? If you need to provide medical care, impound the animal, bring it to the shelter. But for the most part, most of the calls that we run are relatively minor. And so this is a great way to kind of resolve some of that. X or Twitter, if people are there, we should be too. Okay, if people are on Twitter, if they get their news from Twitter or X, it feels weird saying X, but it is what it's called. So if you get, your news from X, well, we should be there. We should be ingrained into that the same way that we should be ingrained into our local businesses and our local police departments with our local route carriers for for the postal service, for any delivery drivers, Amazon, it doesn't matter. It's the same concept. If people are there with information, we should be too. And this is an example here of a guy that got reunited with his pet through Twitter. The guy was like crying, bawling his eyes out. Pretty cool. A lot of agencies claim that they cannot legally return dogs back to their homes. And I always look at those laws, and you've got to really look at them. And so if an ordinance says any animal control officer shall, an animal control officer shall impound any animal found roaming at large, right? What do you hear? What are some pivotal words here? Shall is usually what people go to, right? It doesn't say may, right? So that lends itself to a lack of discretion from an officer standpoint, bound by ordinances. However, what's the rest of it say? Shall impound any animal found roaming at large. So first off, does that mean that I need to go impound all the birds, right? Do I need to go catch squirrels today? Because that's what the ordinance says. And then also impound. Is the word impound defined? Okay, and if impound isn't defined, then you as the expert in the industry are the one that's responsible for defining it or taking the spirit of that law. Okay, there's the concept of spirit of the law here. And so I defined impound as anytime I have control over an animal, right? Anytime I have confinement, and AKA whenever I have a dog on a leash, when any agent of the municipality has confinement of an animal. So really get to know your laws, chop it up. We used to like play role play where I would be like a defense attorney and another officer would be the prosecutor, and like we would try to go back and forth. It's a great way to find loopholes in your ordinances and understand them intimately. I want to talk for a second about fix-it tickets and warnings and citations. So what is the purpose of a warning, a written warning? Typically, the purpose of a written warning is to establish prior contact, okay? Just in case the problem continues and you can testify in court that there was prior contact. Now, challenge me on this, please, but a verbal warning is also admissible in court. And I talk about this because in this particular situation, imagine going up to, Fluffy's house, knocking on the door. Hey, I found Fluffy. Is this your dog? Yes, that's my dog. Thank you so much. Now, can I see your ID? Like my ID, right? It's such a minor thing. And so it immediately breaks trust with the person that we're dealing with. And so I always like to communicate this as a peer-to-peer. And I would say mama filter, right? Like, does this pass the mama filter? Are you handling this situation the same way that you would handle it if this was your mom? Rarely is that the case. And so if it takes an ID for me to write a warning or a fix-it ticket, why? Right? Like, if I can go to court and I can testify, I can say on this date at this time, I responded to this address. This is what I saw. This is what I did. This is what I was going to do, right? The basic structure of a report. And I can say that in front of the judge. I spoke to somebody, identified themselves as Mr. Jones, claimed that they were the owner of this animal or whatever that might be. You can still testify in court without breaking the trust. So what I used to do is I would just be like, okay, what's your name? You just get the basic information, get the name, get the dog's name, get the address. Have a good day. Oh, by the way, I got some extra dog food on the truck, right? I ain't going to eat it. I didn't buy it. You want it? Right? And that's a great way to be peer-to-peer with our community and residents of our community to change our image, to be proactive, and to really flip the narrative upside down of what animal control is and does. There are studies that show how a peer-to-peer model of investigation lend itself to compliance. So not long ago, I was pulled over. The officer let me go. I was pulled over for going like 13 miles an hour over the speed limit. Officer let me go. It was illegal for me to go that fast, but there was officer discretion on if I needed a citation or not. The same thing applies here. Just because you witness a violation does not mean that you have to issue paperwork. You have discretion. And another concept here is when I was working in Atlanta, I kept getting caught on these speed traps, right? These cameras. And Amy, one of a good friend of mine with the police department, reached out and was like, Nick, I cannot do this anymore. Like, you need to stop speeding down 14th. Do it for me, is what she said. Well, the philosophy or the psychology there, do it for me, resonated, right? Like, I would do it for a friend, but like this fear-based speed limit sign is rarely one that I acknowledge, right? If you know me, you know I speed, I can't help it. But anytime I would approach 14th Street, I would stop speeding for Amy because there was a personal relationship with somebody that I respected, a friendship. There was trust, there was a peer-to-peer relationship involved. And that's the same thing that we can establish with our community to lend itself to compliance. All right. Make sure you have documents, okay? We're not always in, look, I'm not opposed to fix-it tickets. I'm not opposed to warnings. I'm just saying use your balance and use tools in your toolbox effectively whenever you use the right tool for the right situation is what I'm trying to say. And definitely track it, okay? So if we are not tracking the amount of return to homes that we do, then we will not get credit for it. And we will never be recognized for the work that we do. And that common narrative will continue. And so definitely track your good work. Put something up on social media. If you are a position of leadership, post something on social media of the officer that conducted the most return to homes that month and post it, right? Start to share things that are positive about what animal control does. I know we are not just dog catchers. I know that. The problem is the community doesn't. And so we need to start sharing the good work that we do and stop being so guarded and start being more transparent about the work that we have going on. Really quickly, I want to touch on fence fixing. Not long ago, well, kind of it was last year. So I guess it was long ago. I was riding in the desert, right? I was out in California. And this officer was so frustrated because she had to drive an hour out of her way for the 6th time, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, to issue a citation for the 6th time, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that is 6 hours there, 6 hours back, right? That's 12 hours. The amount of time spent in court, unknown, but a ton of time. So we're looking at probably over 20 hours of time just for one particular case where a Chihuahua was able to get out of a wrought iron front porch gate. And I asked this officer, I was like, wouldn't it be possible? Should we just could we just bring chicken wire, and just weave that chicken wire through the wrought iron gate there? She was like, that's not my responsibility. That was a very important thing that she said there. It's not my responsibility. Okay, it's not your responsibility, but it is your problem. Okay, you are so bound by this concept of responsibility that you are willing to spend 20 plus hours of your life dealing with this Chihuahua getting out of a wrought iron front porch. Okay, nothing productive happened here. Okay, the problem wasn't solved. The court wasn't taking it seriously. You were just being dragged through the mud. You were like the stick that the neighbor was poking the other neighbor with. Just fix the problem. Just fix it and keep it moving. This is going to repeat. If all officers on staff have, fence mending material, they have a toolbox with pliers and wire and zip ties and all the, different, I used to use broken dog crates as great panels to fix fences with. And if every officer is doing this, then you're going to start to see reduction in repeat offenders. And if you see a reduction in repeat offenders, you see an increase in bandwidth. And if you see an increase in bandwidth, you can increase your amount of time spent trying to further this proactive model of law enforcement. It's the cycle, but on the other end of the coin, right? It's not that vicious cycle on the front end where you break trust. Community members don't respect you. They don't get their animals from you. You take the animals, they go get another one from a breeder, right? Some free puppies in the Walmart parking lot. It's the other end of that, where we can be proactive, fix fences, peer-to-peer model of communication and investigation, be there for support and resources. And you'll start to see an increase in compliance, increase in bandwidth, increase in everything, and it just starts to snowball from there. All right, so check out our Humane Animal Control Manual. It is available for free online. It is one of the most comprehensive pieces of literature for modern day animal control, period. I believe that it should be in every single animal control agency across this country. It is going to be a linchpin in changing this narrative. We also have a ton of playbooks and access to training. If you don't know where to start, like if you want to write an SOP, which by the way, we didn't even talk about SOPs on this presentation. Put it in your policy, right? Mandate it. Make sure that your officers are out there trying. Some agencies say you can't even put complete until you speak to 4 different people. But anyways, we have playbooks online with SOPs attached, with different resources available to help you really get started and get a quick clip of various different topics, everything from sanitation to animal control. Here is my email. Please use it if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or if you do something really cool in your agency and you wanted to share it with me so that I can put it on this presentation and share it with others, right? Most of what's on this presentation, I haven't even tried. It's just things that I've gotten to witness agencies, real life municipal agencies in this country utilize. So I appreciate the time. I appreciate the opportunity. Let's get some dogs back home, and thank you for what you do for a living.